That's okay.
That's important. Taking a bite of your mango. Yeah,
Sorry.
that is totally important, especially since it's quite obvious that you procured mango out of season. So cheers to you for that.
I'm trying to eat healthy as well. I love
That's,
biscuits, so instead of biscuits, have mangoes instead.
in American we call that a cookie. Okay.
Oh,
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I think people should soon be popping back in to
yes,
the thing.
yes, they will.
Yes, everybody come on in, pop
Yeah,
on in. Pop.
yeah. Pop, pop, pop.
Before they come in, Cynthia,
Yeah.
how is the young man doing?
He's doing
Rah
just
rah
fine.
rah.
Still trying to get over this crazy cold, I tell you.
Wow.
It's
Oh,
so difficult, especially since the weather don't know what it want to do in Chicago. So he is suffering the aftermath of it, and he does not want me to ever wipe his face. So if he
Oh,
is like running at the nose, and of course the first thing I want to do is like get a wipe and like wipe all that stuff off of his face. He is fighting me tooth and nail, and I'm like, so you just want to just sit there with snot on your face is basically what you're telling me. And obviously he's cool with it. I'm not. I'm not.
boy.
I'm totally not, but you know.
dog is in chat asking what
Oh,
happened. It was my fault. Sorry, I know it came up as fields, but yeah, that was my fault.
yeah.
We
Love
ended
you.
the wrong
It does
stream, dog.
happen.
Sorry about that. Stuff
Oh,
happens. Our
gosh.
bad.
I hope everyone will come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they will.
Tell
As if dog
everybody
sees it, they will should see it.
tell everybody to go ahead and come back over here. Oh, I love you too, dog.
Yeah,
Love
dog.
you too. I'm hoping that you're feeling better. I'm hoping that
almost,
you're recovering good. Well,
almost as much as Esther.
I
Oh, dog,
I hope that you're recovering well, dog. I really do, because I know
Yeah,
that you were going through it. So I'm hoping that you got like
for
some
a couple of
reprieve.
months.
Yeah, reprieve for your recovery. So
Mm-hmm.
most definitely.
And he was on Esther's channel it was
few days
last week,
ago.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
He was.
yeah. And it was dog. No mistake.
What do you suggest I do? Should I
Joy's
get work
back.
is here? So great, right? Get work is here.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will come
Yeah.
back.
Because they will see the the notification.
I apologize, guys. That was my fault.
No problem. These two things happen. Oh, it does.
Yes. As
They don't know about that.
as the people
Technical.
say in my mother's neck of the woods, things happen, man.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Things happen, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Irie.
And by the way, no, you say that. By the way, today's have been free yourself from mental slavery.
His
No
birthday?
one else can free your mind. Yeah, Bob's birthday.
Right. Oh wow!
February
Oh,
6th.
shout out to
And it
Bob
will have been my
Marley.
father's birthday too.
Oh wow!
Well, shout out to Phil's father's birthday and to Bob
Yeah,
Marley.
Marley.
Free
my
your
late
mind from
father.
mental slavery.
To slavery.
Free
Oh,
you.
yeah.
You
Free your
too.
mind.
Free you.
Free you too.
Yeah, one man.
Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever had. Yes. Gosh, I can't wait to go back to Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah, he will have been 78 today. So,
Free youth.
Wow. You'd have been 78.
Yeah. That's yeah. He born in 45 actually. 1945. But
yeah.
Oh yeah. His songs live on.
Yeah, it's a long time. Your dad was born
and it crossed the world, you know.
Mm-mm.
Your dad was born at the end of and Bob Marley was born at the end of the World War II.
Right, but my father born in World War III, born like 1937. Yeah, born 1937.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. My father, rest in peace, was born in 1933. Oh,
No,
okay.
Jerome,
This is a serious question.
oh yes.
This is a serious question. Okay, so let me read it just so I can actually answer it properly, Gerwalk. Okay, so Cynthia McDonald, what is your favorite Star Trek series? Star Trek episode 3, and then Star Trek fan fiction film, YouTube series 4, and then Star Trek Captain. This is very important questions to me. You know what? They're important to me too. So I'm going to
Oh,
do my
wow.
best to making sure that I can actually answer them properly. Okay, so I would have to say that my favorite Star Trek series is Star Trek The Next Generation. A close second would be Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And the main reason is because Avery Brooks, aka Captain Cisco, was a brother,
Mhm.
and I remember him from Hawkeye, and and so I followed his career for a moment. He was also excuse me, a singer and a jazz musician, as well as a
Oh.
professor of I forgot specifically which university he teaches acting at, but he is a professor of acting as well. This
Whoa.
Yes. Matter of fact, I saw like some documentary specifically about how he would have to dial back some of his acting prowess because of some of the co-stars that he was working with. But yeah, that man can act his ass off. And my favorite
Wow.
Star Trek episode specifically was I okay, I would have to say I forgot specifically what the name of the Star Trek episode was, but it was Deep Space Nine, when Captain
Mm-hmm.
Sisko was went back in time and was a writer, and during
Oh.
Jim Crow, and he was trying to write the actual story about how, you know Deep Space Nine, the space chase in of itself was like led by a black man, and how
Uh-huh.
they didn't want to publish his story because it was led by a black man. And I remember like one of his best monologue, he said, you can't take that away from me. It's in here. It's intrinsic. And that
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
really hit home because he was really, and I really appreciated how like the series really like, talked about, how ingrained racism was in America, specifically
Mm-hmm.
at that time, and how like,
Yes.
even though that he was such a talented person, especially with his writing, all these particular barriers were in front of him and that he couldn't get it out. That was like one. I felt like, thank you. Yes, that you're right. Rutgers University. Thank you. Yeah, because he said that on the Captain's documentary with William Shatner. But
Mm.
yeah, that was like one of my favorite episodes ever of any Star Trek series. Close second would be anytime the Q came on, because
Oh yeah.
yeah, anytime the Q came on Next Generation, he always wrecked shit, so I always
Oh yeah.
appreciated
Uh,
Q
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
in, especially like when he sent them to actually meet the Borg. I thought that was like a really great episode because like, the haughtiness of Captain
Yes.
Picard actually kind of came down, because like, especially when he had to make that admission that like, we're not ready, I need your help, Q, and then
Yeah.
like he,
Oh yeah.
it took a big person to actually say that, so I
and
appreciate that
and
episode.
even
So
in the last Picard season 2, when he played a major role in the Q.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yes.
when Q became
Follow on,
human, when Q
Yeah.
became human, and then and Whoopi Goldberg stabbed his like hand. That was great. And then like, all of a sudden like, he got his powers back because like, Q ended up humbling himself. Q and Captain
Yeah.
Picard's relationship is so
Shit.
dynamic.
Oh
Because like
yeah.
they were kind of like a mirror of one another, and and I think
Another.
that one of
Oh.
the main reasons why Picard didn't particularly care for Q in the beginning is because there was some things in Q that he saw in himself that he didn't particularly care for. And I think vice
Mm-hmm.
versa was the case as well. Um, and then my favorite fan fiction is the Star Trek continuing, Star Trek continues, where it was a group of people, I believe they were out in California, that were doing some pretty high production of Star Trek, the original series, according
Oh,
to their, and it's all on YouTube. I watched a lot of those particular
right.
episodes. They're really well done. And the, excuse me, some of them even was able to procure some original Star Trek
Oh,
personas in Star Trek Continues. So, if you get a chance to check that on YouTube, I would. Um,
yeah.
Captain, of course, I would say, Avery Brooks. I mean, because he was, especially like by the time the season 2, season 3 hit, and he changed his look back to the Hawk, presentation with the gold tee, and I was like, whoo,
Oh, yeah.
I'll be still my heart. Oh
Hot,
my
hot
goodness.
and that's what you call hot and bothered.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes, and
Oh, yeah.
I was so hot and bothered when I saw. I was like, yeah, oh yes,
Oh,
go ahead, Avery. That's what I'm talking about.
gosh.
Yes, so I hope all that like answers your questions, girl. Walk. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
that's an
yeah.
important question. I agree. That's an important question.
Very important. But yeah, so I think a lot okay, a number of people are back here. Um right, so you were the last thing you said before it was cut, you were talking about the um how the right we were saying how the Pentecostal churches and so on tend to grab people because of the charisma sort of thing they try to put over, and 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 as we know, then it's not only the Pentecostal churches, but charisma type cults tend to draw people because
Oh
they are
yeah,
looking for this. What it does is trigger like their serotonin levels and the feel good
yeah,
levels. So it's
yeah,
almost like taking drugs that make them feel that way, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like as a person has been partaken of certain, hallucinogens,
No, you
Yeah.
no, you never. No, you never.
well, the most is wine and weed. That's the most as I have ever done is wine and weed. I've been offered other ones, and I said, no, the most I would do is
Right.
wine and weed, but but one of the things that like all these things have in common is that they
Hmm.
trigger something in our particular brains called dopamine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I've heard like other atheists who are prominent in the internet or what have you, talk about the
Hmm.
experiences that they would have at church when music is playing, and and like
Yes.
the energy is high, and they
Hmm.
would have a very similar experience whether they are at a concert or even if they're having sex, because
Hmm.
those the present
I just.
principle, you know, fair use
Yeah.
is portions of your brain is being triggered at that time, and and I think that that's
Yes.
one of the things that really grabs people, specifically
Hmm.
in like those charismatic churches. I think that's what they call it, charismatic, because it's like a
Yeah.
bunch of charisma is going on, right? Like
Hmm.
one of the things that they make sure to do is groom their musicians to be the best musicians
Yeah.
ever, no matter how they live in their life. They could be some of the worst
Hmm.
people ever, but they always get a pass as far as like their
Yeah.
behavior is concerned. I know they
Oh
did it when I
yes.
was in my so, like they fucking and smucking, what I'm saying? Like, all the whole time, and still playing, during service. And I'm like, y'all ain't seeing this. Okay, cool. Very good. Like, so like if you sing well and you can play your instrument very well, you win like Flynn, right? Because they
Yeah.
play, and I remember like at the time, my pastor's wife would be like very flippant about
Hmm.
musicians playing and different things of that nature, because she wanted to make sure that the and whoever is like on the in the pulpit area is living a holy lifestyle, right? But the thing about it is that all of them knew that like dudes was like out there just like really just doing their thing. And they got
Mm-hmm.
paid too. And the thing about it is like me and my counterparts who would do praise and worship, who would lead, who would teach choir, do all this stuff, we ain't see a dime. We was told like,
Mm.
true story, was told when we were in Levite class, when they were teaching us, yeah, right, yes, yeah,
Right
Levite,
class.
this shit
What were
was
you? What were they training you to? Were they training you to receive tithes?
they were training us to to live our lives accordingly like Levites did back in the day during the Old Testament.
Uh,
And how any person who happens to be in leadership and or in the music in the music ministry or
mm-hmm.
likened to be Levites, okay? and and
Ah.
and then because like we all saw that musicians every time that they would get come, they would get a check every
Of
week
course.
without fail. But
Mm-hmm.
those who are singing and those who are doing choir and things of that nature, they don't see a dime. Matter of fact, we're constantly
Mm-hmm.
giving out of our pockets to make sure ministry is still
Oh
going,
yeah.
but we're not getting a return on our investment or whatsoever.
Nope.
So before, but no one really brought it up because like we were very concerned about how we would be received by the leadership. And I remember specifically the pastor's wife, and I think that the pastor said this too. He said, well, those singers who are looking to get paid, then, you all need to like be like the Levites and actually live in the church. I'm like, well, shit, I'm getting tired of paying rent
Wow.
then, but you go ahead and get my room ready and I will move in if that's the case. Yes,
Really?
sir. I would.
Wow.
But I mean, but the thing about it is that it was so hypocritical as far as
Mm-hmm.
like how people, were treated per se, as far as like who was going to come up and get, any type of check whatsoever versus those who don't. But
Yeah.
we're still expected to show up every Sunday, regardless of what if you're sick or not. We're still expected to give part of our ministry, even if like there's certain
Mm-hmm.
aspects of the ministry that we're are not allowed to do because pastor said. And then we're
Yeah.
still expected to even give out pockets, regardless, like even if we're not necessarily faring well financially at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, after a while, even though like I bought into all that bullshit, you know what I'm saying? As
Right.
far as like giving tithes, giving offering, pastors
Mm-hmm.
appreciation, first fruit, whatever, making sure that you show up to teach the children and the adults, even though they're both of their asses is hard headed as fuck when it comes to actually teaching them, music and things of that nature. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And then like and here's I think that this is the thing that kind of like just like was the broken straw and for me. The
Mm-hmm.
straw that broke the camel's back rather.
It comes back. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I think it was two things. So one issue that I had specifically is my pastor at the time uh chewed out the dance ministry leader. And the reason being is because she had a young girl at the time, she's an adult now, dance in front of during praise and worship, and she happened to be a bit chunky. Now she wasn't like morbidly obese, she just was like a little chunky. And then
Mm-hmm.
so, we had like leadership meeting like the next week, and then like pastor is going off talking about don't let nobody fat dance in the pulpit. And I mean,
Wow.
and at that time I was much bigger, and every time that I directed the choir, I danced too. As a matter of fact, people enjoyed it because they said, "Shoot, Sister Cynthia show can't move." I said, "That's a Jamaican style of me," but that's neither here nor there. But
Whoa.
but
But
yeah, but that's what he
wow.
said. I know answers like, "What the fuck?" Yes, girl. Yes, sis. That's what he said. Don't nobody have no one fat dancing
Oh
in
my
the pulpit
gosh.
area during praise and
Can I
worship.
let me tell you just very quickly
Yeah, go
an
ahead. Go
experience
ahead.
that I had.
Mhm.
So I was young, about I can't remember how old I was, about 16, 17. I was part of the youth ministry,
Mhm.
and we were assigned a new pastor. I was secretary of the youth. By this time, I was on fire for God. I was
Oh.
on fire.
Ah.
I was
Mm-hmm.
this.
Eh.
I was hot.
Hot.
I was
Mm-mm.
at that age. I would go to listen. I would fast 3 days, no
Mm.
food.
Wow.
Mm.
Exactly. So
He was
anyway,
after God.
um, we were assigned a new pastor
Hmm.
to the youth group, and we never saw him. He had never showed up. We never seen. So where is our
Mm-hmm.
pastor? He's been assigned to us, but just never showed up. So we, as the board, or the youth, the board of the youth, decided after church on this particular Sunday, we'll go looking for our
Mm-hmm.
pastor. He needs to come and at least have a
Oh.
word with us, something. So we
Yeah.
went to go look for him. The attitude on the man, the way he behaved, he was just, like didn't want to talk with us.
Mm.
Anyway, he
Wow.
called us in the office. We all sat down, and the president spoke. Sir, we've come to look for, because since you've been appointed, we haven't seen you. Um, and the
Mm.
man looks at me and tells me to stand up. Right, this was his
Oh.
response. Why
Mm.
he hasn't seen, why he hasn't been to us. So it took me to get up. So I was wondering, me? Yes, you. So I got up, said, turn around. It said, turn around. So I turned. He said, look at how this one is dressed. And you want me to come and speak to people like you when you you have people like this dressed your among you? What was I wearing? I was wearing my African dress. Um, I think it was a short sleeve, so my arms were showing, but it was long skirt, right? But it was just my arms
Mm-hmm.
on show, just because it
Oh.
had a strap there, so just arms on show, and then I had it was just a little scarf. It's part of the dress,
Hmm.
scarf. So not all my head was covered.
All right. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
it was because my arm was showing, and I didn't have all my hair covered up. This man just he embarrassed me. And he said, until you guys clean up your act, dress how you should dress, behave how you should behave, then he'll come see us. It was so embarrassing.
Oh gosh.
That is you can kiss my ass right
Oh
now.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Both sets of seriously,
Yeah.
I
Give
have one
him the
of those
middle
too
finger.
with I have a I this it was this one African shop that's like not too far from where I live, and I purchased like one of those long skirts that has like the matching pattern tie that you can either tie around your head or you can tie it on as a bow. I wore it a few times as around my head and also around and I love it, and especially because the reason why I love it is because it has pockets. Like, like anytime that like I have like a nice outfit that actually has pockets, and I paid a good penny for it. They wasn't they didn't skip like this. Like you gonna pay? I'm like shit. Okay, that's cool. But anyway, but I mean it's good quality, but normally the way I wear it because it's a scarf and a tie. So either you wear it up or you
Mm-hmm.
wear it on your and like I wear it both ways, and I always wore it with like a black bodysuit that has like a longer sleeve. So I know
Yep.
in certain places, even though like this thing is long, I'm not showing anything like revealing, but like if the bodysuit
Mm-hmm.
itself is kind of clingy and you can see like my torso, including like my breast, even though like I'm not showing cleavage or anything like that, but like if they're sticking out, then that's kind of depending on where you go, that's going to be a problem.
Of
And
course.
I'm just like,
Mm, mm, mm.
and I mean, and the crazy thing about it is like there is so, and that's another thing that I felt like really hypocritical, specifically about church leadership, is that we have so many stipulations on women. How they
Yes.
dress,
Yes.
how they present themselves, what they can and what they cannot do. And even in some cases, I know the church that I was part of, like the ministers, whether they were men or women, could admonish us about even our underwear. Like one of the
What?
yes, like I had one minister said that you guys like make sure that like when you're singing in the choir on Sunday that you're not wearing white bras because
What?
because white bras can show sometimes through your clothing. If I'm lying, I'm dying. I was like, what the
Oh, wow.
who are you to be?
But you find that a lot especially in the holiness movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
I mean,
was
like
part of the holiness movement at one
gatekeeping
point.
our draws, y'all.
Can you imagine this?
Wow.
No, can I just point out, Sir Little Wolf says
Yes.
you're doing good. I got married.
Oh,
Congratulations.
congrats, Sir Little Wolf.
Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Hey,
Sir Little
got
Wolf.
married. Why didn't you invite us? Ugh.
Right.
I
I
love,
wanted
I
to
love, I love weddings. I
I
do.
do too. I mean, I would have
Yeah.
thrown rice. I would have sang
Yes.
Sing,
all that. Like I would have
If
did it, but
if anyone's getting married, you better send me my invites.
that's right. That's right. That's right. You know,
And I invite to sing too.
yeah,
To
like
sing at the
yes.
wedding.
I do. I love weddings. I will prepare myself for weddings. Like, so my partner's son is dating a young lady who happens to be Indian. And so
Mhm.
I told him, I said, I need them to get married. They don't even have to stay married for a long time. He said, why? I said, I always wanted to go to an Indian wedding. I
Wedding.
have
Oh,
watched Bollywood movies for long, and like
Right.
Indian weddings are so spectacular. I need
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
attend one before I die. That's a bucket list of
Yeah. Yeah.
mine.
Oh yeah.
Like
They're really
I need that
spectacular.
to happen. I need all of that. I need the dancing. I need all the
Mm-hmm.
colors. I need to dress in a sari. I need all of that. That has to happen in my lifetime.
Lifetime.
And if any person needs me, and if you need me to talk with them, I will to make sure this happens. And if if her parents have an issue, put them on the phone with me. I'll get them together.
So saying so right, so the hypocrisy is one of the nails in the coffin, and what else you would say
Yeah, the
brought
hypocrisy
you?
was like the all the hypocrisy that I saw like in the church was just like really like a turn off for me. And then also too,
Mm-hmm.
another issue that I had was when I was studying to be a minister and we started to get into like, the stuff that they don't talk about in church per se. We were
Ah.
getting to the more problematic portions of the Bible
Mm-hmm.
and I had a bunch of questions. I would always like, because like that's how you learn. My mom would
Mm-hmm.
teach me, my teachers as time went on would teach me to ask questions in order for me to learn. So this is the
Right.
same, method that I would employ so that I can learn when I
Mm-hmm.
was in class. And
Mm-hmm.
I asked so many questions that I was told specifically, Sister Cynthia, you just pray and have faith and ask God to reveal these questions to you. And the crazy thing about the mess up part about it is with that specifically is that
Mm-hmm.
because I remember specifically when I was in Houston last year in October, and I was talking to a young lady who was raised Jewish, but she's an atheist now. And one of the things I asked her, like, what kind of like got you to the point where you're atheist, even though like you were raised Jewish? And she
Mm-hmm.
said, well, in when we went to Hasidic school, Jewish Hebrew school rather, we were
Right.
encouraged to ask questions. We were encouraged
Mm-hmm.
to implore skepticism. We were encouraged, to apply critical thinking. But in
Mm-hmm.
the church, that is actually not something that is encouraged. It's actually discouraged. Like, we tell people, instead of like asking questions, to have faith. If they have
Faith,
doubts, to
yeah.
pray for, to ask
Mm-hmm.
God to actually reveal whatever. I've heard the pastor say on a multitude of time periods that he was Holy Ghost talked. I have no idea what the fuck that means now. Like, so, a whole fucking smoke and
Oh,
mist
well,
came down
yeah.
and talked you shit. I don't know. Like, and even
Yeah.
like at that time when I first heard him say that, that still like really bugged me because I had no idea what that meant. And like it,
Mm-hmm.
and also too, like, it got to the point where even when I would go to church and you would have serious conversations, that stuff started to sound cryptic as fuck. Like,
Yep.
you know, like,
Eh,
listen, I am a person that like straight answers, keep it simple, stupid,
mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Straight no chaser, give me the real. I don't like cryptic thinking, cryptic answers and things of that nature,
Answers, yeah.
or even telling me that you need more faith to pray. I'm like, no, answer my fucking question. You know what I'm saying?
Send
If
you
Yeah, and if you don't know the question, if you don't know the answer, just say I don't know.
right.
That would be more honest to me if you did that rather than
Honest, correct.
yeah. And that never happened. And so
Wow.
by the time that I got to the end of ministerial class, everybody graduated from ministerial classes and got their college except for me and another guy.
Wow. Because they
Yes.
all ask too many questions, right?
Well, I'm not really sure about him. He would ask some questions, but not as much as me. I
Mm-hmm.
was like the inquisitive one out of everybody. And
Right.
but they said to me that God said I am not ready to become a minister, and I need to be in ministerial classes longer so that I can
Mm-hmm.
get so he can get me ready. I don't know, child. It was
Oh gosh. But didn't you realize too that they use a lot of what I used to coin these super spiritual sort of terminologies that sounds deep but are not really deep. They're just shit deep, deep in shit,
deepities. Yeah, deepities. Yeah.
deepities,
Yeah. I mean, like
deep in shit.
every um church service and also class has some type of deepity attached to it. And
Yeah.
especially like when I was asking my questions concerning like, certain things that we've seen in the Bible that was problematic to me. Um and not really getting like a
Mm-hmm.
proper answer that made sense,
Mm-hmm.
logical sense, and then a deepity would be implored. And then instead of like, just like saying like, okay, I'm just going to accept that deepity and go, shh, ooh, Jesus, you so deep, you drowning. But, but
Don't in
instead,
shit.
like, I was just like, and I mean, like, sometimes I would keep some of my doubts to myself because I know that if,
Mm-hmm.
if sometimes if I will bring some of these things up, when I
Yeah.
was at church with some of my counterparts, I would probably get scolded or again said that
Ooh.
need to have you like Cynthia, you need to pray more, whatever.
Yeah, or that the devil is confusing your mind
Yeah,
because
exactly.
even
Yeah, yeah.
I feel you. I feel you because even when I was going through my deconstruction still in the Wesleyan Holiness Church at the point in time, but going through this deconstruction, we're becoming more, thinking more. I knew there were certain things that I could not say to people in the church or ask them because I know the sort of answers we get that are, oh, the devil trying to confuse your mind. It's the devil.
Everything's the
Then these are
devil.
serious questions,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, because that's how they operate. You have to accept by faith. God is a God of mystery.
Or
Everything is
whatever.
everything, right? God is a God of mystery. You're not going to understand. His understanding is way above
Standing is way
yours. His
above.
ways
Yeah,
are
no.
above your ways. His thoughts are above your
In
thoughts.
Uh,
all
Yada
your ways,
yada
in
yada.
all your ways, lean not on your own
Wrong
understanding.
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 Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But
All
it's not, but that's just a way of saying we don't have a clue what it is,
and that
but
would be
just
more.
accept it. And
And that
that
would be more honest just to
honest.
say, I don't know. I
No,
mean,
but they have to
Mm,
pretend. They have to pretend that they know.
That that
As Aaron Eugene says, they do a lot of pretending. They
listen,
pretend they know when they
let me tell
don't
you
know.
something.
they
Let me tell you something.
gaslight you even.
Yeah,
Right.
gaslight you. Yeah.
And the gas, okay. Let me tell you some example of this perfectly. I was
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, it was warmer than normal day, and I decided to get my
Mm-hmm.
car washed because I had a bunch of salt on it from the street and the salt trucks clearing out.
Right.
So and I know that like if you keep that on there, it can mess up your paint, it can rust your car, it can cause problems.
Right.
So I went to a car wash specifically, but that's not too far from my house, but it was a long time. It was like almost like a 2 hour wait before you can actually go in to get the car wash. So while I was waiting to go inside, I was listening to last week's Atheist Experience. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
this specific call. This guy called in and asked about he was going through he was bringing up I believe either the first or the second law of thermodynamics that says that energy
Oh,
cannot be created or nor destroyed.
no, sorry. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so basing that since energy cannot be created nor destroyed, that nature could not create itself. And I know that at that particular time, Jim Barrows and Jamie Boone was on there, and they have like a way better understanding of like thermodynamics
Mm-hmm.
and some of the sciences that happen to be
Right.
within physics at that point, and I do not. But I was just thinking to myself, like like say for instance, if I was on the atheist experience, how would I answer that question? And the only thing I have is to say is that from what I know, that
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to anything that we have attributed to in human history that was created by supernatural means, we
Yeah.
have debunked that
Mm,
and
yes.
found that there were laws that created X, Y, and Z. We used to say that the sun was supernaturally created or
We
was an actual
created.
deity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there were several different areas in on the earth
Mm-hmm.
and cultures that like called the sun a
Yeah.
god
Mm,
until science came along and then came up with the properties to say no, this is not a god, this is a natural
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon, this is a natural entity, and it's a star, and actually came up with
Yes.
characteristics of how stars operate, and even saw that these suns or stars were replicable in other systems throughout the
Sims.
universe.
Right. Right.
And they mentioned too about how like even though that we can say that the universe in of itself is an isolated and is an isolated system,
The
but the earth
system.
is not. The earth is not.
Right. It's
There
not.
it is not. And through and we know specifically here on earth and
Mm-hmm.
that everything that we know as far as like how as far as like evolution is concerned and natural selection,
Mm-hmm.
everything that we understand how that absolutely happened was through a natural means. We have
Means right.
never attributed a supernatural event or phenomenon to create
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Thing.
So
Nope.
so like so my thing is like, so what methodology are you using, sir, especially since you're not a scientist, you're just going
Correct.
completely by conjecture to
Yep.
say that
Yep.
nature could not create itself? I mean, like
Yep.
because we don't have like any means to say that
It
it didn't. And
means. Mm-hmm.
his excuse was, well, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. I said, yeah, because we don't necessarily have the tools to
Yeah.
observe what happened before time is before space time.
For space and time. Yeah,
Yeah,
space time.
yeah.
But
We don't have
what you
to.
just said there,
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
know, the sad thing is that they will teach that to their children, that in that way, because today, you know, I teach. Yeah, I'm a teacher of science,
Hmm.
and I was trying to explain to students. I was talking about classification. I said, they are monkeys.
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, I'm not a monkey." I said, "Yes, you have characteristics of a monkey." He said,
Yeah.
"But no, the Genesis say otherwise." I was
Oh,
like, "No."
This is
Right, and
bullshit.
but yeah, but then he talked about the Big Bang.
Yeah.
So I said, "So do you really know what the Big Bang is?" He said, "It's an explosion." I said, "Nope, you got it wrong." And all the persons that you hear telling you about Big Bang and telling you about evolution, they give it totally incorrect.
Yeah.
Right? They're totally incorrect. He said, "No, no, this is." I said, "All right, all right." I said, "You need to go and do your research."
Right.
And I
Yeah.
said, "It's the science." He said, "Oh, you have the science believe that." I said, "It's not having nothing to do with what I believe. I don't believe. It
Mhm.
is what the science, the facts actually show, the evidence." Because he said, "Oh, I believe that I believe that the earth was created by God." Right? He said,
Mhm.
"But you don't believe. You believe that it happened such and such." I said, "It's not a belief. It is more than a belief. It is that I have the evidence." And
Right.
that's the difference there,
Right.
you
do
know?
You know.
do you find that sometimes they want to tell you what you believe and what you don't believe,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
And
Yeah.
when they tell you
Yeah.
that you know there is a God, but you're suppressing the knowledge of
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, like, no, and that's when I had to tell myself, listen,
Suppress.
I lived a Christian lifestyle per se
Mm.
for the majority of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was
Mm-hmm.
born, I was christened at the age of 2 months into Christianity. And
Humanity.
then I even doubled down on Christianity as far as like, in a more charismatic evangelical way
Yeah.
in when I was 18 years old. And I started to deconstruct my belief in my 30s. And then
Ooh.
by the time I was 41, I said, I'm no
Mhm.
longer a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an atheist, and the reason that happened is because I started to try to rectify all these different beliefs and the things that I was taught as a
Yes.
young person, and even in ministerial classes, and try
Mm-hmm.
to compare that to what I know is considered reality, and it does not match up. And so when I'm even having those conversations with theists, and they would ask me, because I've been asked a couple of times, like, well, how can you be atheist when you see this, that, and the third? And I remember the last conversation I had was with a young lady who was challenging me on my non-belief. And
Mm-hmm.
she and there was another person who was a theist in the car, and I stopped both of them because like they were constantly inundating me with all these like really weak arguments that I know because I've used them in the past when
Right.
I would do evangelism work, etc. And I said, listen, let me ask you a question. Define God.
Mm.
She said to me, the universe. I said, cool.
Ooh.
I
Mm-hmm.
turned to the other young person, the other young man who was in this conversation. I said, define God. And I got a total different answer.
There you
I
go.
said, okay, listen. Okay, see, you
Mm-hmm.
said one thing and he said the other, and both of you all happen to believe in God. If
Mhm.
you all can't come up with a section, a subsect of who God is, how will you convince me?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly. And that
Yeah.
right there is the problem of Christianity.
Problem.
yeah,
That
Oh
right there is the
yes.
crux of the matter. Hence why you have over 40,000
over
Different
thousand
45,000
denominations.
different
Thousand.
denominations of
denominations,
And
Christianity throughout the
and
world.
and
and
yeah.
and and in one denomination,
Mhm.
Denomination.
in
Many
one
different
denomination,
interpretations.
you cannot get the same answers
Same
Right,
answers.
in the
Yeah.
one.
right.
So it's a mess. A
Yeah,
mess.
it's some exactly. I mean, like I said, listen, you know, see, here's the thing. If I would even give like any type of credence that God exists, I would ask him, and especially like, in the Bible where I believe it was in Proverbs when he said that God is not the author of confusion. But the thing about it is you got a whole bunch of confused motherfuckers that's running around here right now.
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know, because like you do. Like there is like the you got the Black Hebrew Israelites that
Oh yeah.
gather every Saturday in my neighborhood yelling shit and got a whole cardboard a sign of different
Mm-hmm.
scriptures that they coming from. Yet they have a whole different interpretation of who God is and how to practice said religion. And then
Right.
you go to
Mm-hmm.
another church who calls themselves Christians and Bible
Orthodox.
believing and they come up with something completely
Something
different.
completely different.
And I mean like y'all can't even get it together who you say, and you want to give me shit for
You
not
know?
believing. But the thing about it is that you all are supposedly God's ambassadors, and you all are doing a piss poor job of actually being able to communicate properly who the fuck
Correct.
God is. And to be honest with any of you, if God is all knowing, all powerful, and ever present in this entire universe,
Shit, come on.
that he don't need none of y'all to tell to speak
Correct.
for him. He should be able to download in my medulla oblongata, and also, my frontal cortex, be able to tell me who the fuck he is, and I would just believe. And especially like, because like my whole thing is like this: like if you would allow over 45,000 different denominations and different interpretations within those denominations of who you are, and then create a place called hell for people who don't get it right, okay? Then I mean, like, then you're a dick. I'm sorry, because
big dick.
Like, why would you come back and just straighten everybody out? It makes
the
no
biggest one.
sense.
The biggest dick. Yes.
Yeah. But do you know what, Cynthia? You're right, because actual Hebrew, when there's a Hebrew term when it's referring to God and about him filling the temple, it is his genitals that are filling the temple. It's the Hebrew word is actually genitals, but the people use this euphemistic term.
No.
Leg.
Say that again.
The leg in the Hebrew, the old Hebrew, represents genitals.
The what? The
leg.
What scripture is this?
When they
I
talk
need to
about
go back and read
the
this.
legs of God and so on,
legs of God.
they represent the leg of God. If you go back in the Old Testament and about God's feet and so on, there are certain terminologies in there that actually were euphemistic terms for genitals. Like, when the cherubim, they say where, I think it was Isaiah or Jeremiah, where the cherubim was covering their feet. Feet is not, the feet is the term for genitals. It is not feet. It is how they interpret. And what is saying that the cherubim covers, but then God balls, even though they didn't use the term balls, but a euphemistic term, fills the temple because their balls are so small they can't compare to their God, to Yahweh. Read that book by I always get her name pronounced, Francesca.
Yeah.
About God. I got to say that right. I got to say that with you.
I would download Kindle and read.
Yes, the Kindle to that. Yeah, she's really good at looking at, because that's her area expertise, Old Testament and that area.
But,
the Hebrew, Hebrew stuff.
And here's the thing also too, like, because like I would listen to a bunch of Richard Carrier lectures specifically about the historicity of Jesus, about the existence of God, and also how, like, we get like these dying and rising gods, and how like Christianity has borrowed from these mythos for them to actually be able to create their own religion. And even though like I'm not necessarily a mythicist, but I have a tendency to lean more on the
More
mythicism side
just
when it comes to,
yeah.
Jesus and the religion, and to me, and because like the only thing I give credence to is that because like messianic people, as far as like who was considered the
Mm-hmm.
Messiah, and messianic cults was very prevalent at the time.
Yep.
And so I don't doubt that there was some dude named Yeshua who claimed to be God, and even probably
Mm-hmm.
even suffered a capital punishment because he was stirring up trouble. But to me, that is the thing that is irrelevant, because like
Relevant,
history,
correct.
yeah, history is full of people who are claiming to be more than what they
Be
really
more
are.
than what they are. Yep.
My issue is imbuing this dude with divinity.
Unity. Yep.
Exactly.
That's
But
my
that
issue.
was what was happening at the time, because a lot that's why Richard Carrier said what he said, because at that time a lot of persons were, you can see the parallels, right? You can see, hi Ra.
Hello. Hey,
Hi.
big man. Hey,
Hi,
big man.
man. Right,
My
but
God.
they were imbued, they a lot of this stuff, even the Christian beliefs, a lot of, and even the entered near the first century, between the first century just before CE, in the CE, and what's the other terminology they use, BCE.
BE.
BCE,
Right.
yeah,
When
before Common
the
Era.
Israelites were being in Babylon, they had Zoroastrianism. If you look at Zoroastrian beliefs, there are a lot of Christian beliefs
Very parallel, very
follow
parallel.
parallel. They picked up the early Jews, those Jews at that time picked up a lot of these Zoroastrian beliefs. There's an evolution, right? So all
Yeah,
of this you learn after the evangelicals, the feel good people don't tell you these things because their eyes, they wear these blinders. But
Mm.
when you really open and you really look at it without those blinders, you actually see this Bible, man, it is a lot
It's,
of
yeah.
fuckery and it's all
That,
fairy tale stuff, you know?
yeah, it's
So,
fairy tales fuckery. That's exactly what it
can
is.
I,
Don't
yeah,
you repeat
that's
can
that?
what it
I,
is.
can
Oh,
I
Don't repeat
ask,
that.
can I ask, can I ask Cynthia? We just talked, you mentioned the word hell. Now, when I was growing up, hell was such a huge part of my belief system,
Hmm.
believing in Christ, and the very last stage of my deconversion was when I was able to deconstruct hell.
Yeah.
I was terrified of that place, and there was
Hmm.
reasons why, because we were shown all these movies, and it was the focal point
Yeah.
of everything they did. Oh, give your life to Christ or else you go to hell. Oh, you don't want to burn in hell, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do so. And to find out that not all Christians believed in this hell, what we considered, how we were taught hell. I
Hmm.
think that was a shock to me, because I thought it was a universal thing. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to know what was your
mhm.
beliefs like around the subject of hell.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would definitely say my belief system around hell was kind of changed depending on what Christian entity or institution that I was under at that time. So I've always had like a belief that hell existed. However, hell in of itself was taught differently depending on whether if I was Episcopal, whether if I was in Roman Catholic school, and then
Mhm.
also when I went into the Holiness Church. So hell was alluded to as a place you would go if you would sin when I was in Episcopal, when I was Anglican. But that was a but it was more so like, well, as long as you come to church and you do the confession, which is in this book. I still have this book. and I used it recently when I had to do my niece's funeral. But this particular book,
What is
it's
that?
the book of
That
it's the Book of Common Prayer that's used like in the
oh yeah, the
Episcopal
Book of
Church.
Common Prayer, right?
Yeah. And so in here, let me see if I can find the right. Um, it's a right that's in here, basically that of confession.
Yeah.
So like, if you confess your sins to God and to his people and all this other etc., then you're involved, right? And then and now when I was in Catholic school, um I was taught that, the only one who can really absolve you is going to confession, which is the priest. So, you would have like the confessional booth that you will go to and say, "Bless me, Father, I have sinned. It's been X amount of times that I've actually, gave my last confession." And this is a sacrament specifically in Roman Catholic in edict. However, I never participated because I never fully converted to Roman Catholicism. I thought
Uh-huh.
about it, and I was asked if I wanted to do it, but I was like, nah,
Mm-hmm.
too many sacraments. Fuck that. So, so but of course, like growing up at and going to Roman Catholic school, I was very familiar with all the sacraments, and even got a chance to participate in a few, and so I knew the that particular stature of being absolved, right? However, like the Catholics believe that there are levels to sin, but
Oh, oh.
levels to sin. I mean, like even though like sin is sin, but there's like certain levels as far as like how God looks at a sin. And like recently on the nonprofits, we did a story this past Sunday about how Pope Francis said that homosexuality is not a crime, but it's still a sin. But but it's not necessarily, but it shouldn't be but he's basically doing a whole separation of religion and government as far as like how like that particular lifestyle or orientation should be governed.
Mm-hmm.
But in depending on who is pope at that particular time, they may say that, well, it's a sin. However, it's not a sin that hurts people. So maybe they can go to purgatory for a little while. And purgatory this means that this is an area where you are purged of your impurities and for a certain amount of time until God says, "All right, you cool, come to heaven," right? But in the Protestant faith, it's either heaven or hell.
Yes,
Ain't no
yes.
in between,
I
right?
I didn't know purgatory, didn't
Yeah.
know confessions, going to go and talk to somebody for a confession of your sins.
Hmm.
No, I didn't
Yeah.
know any of that.
That's
Mm-mm.
totally a thing. That's totally a thing. Like, the Catholics will tell you after you go to confession and you say, "Bless me, Father, I have sinned." It's been so many times, such times that I have actually been, to confession. The priest would say, "Okay, so what is it that you need to confess, my child?" And you tell them all the issues or sins supposedly that you committed. I
Yeah.
fornicated and I lied and, and I slapped the shit out of somebody who made me angry and all this other stuff. And then, he was like, "Okay, we'll say like, 10 Our Fathers, 5 Hail Marys, and 2 Glory
Oh,
Bees, and pray the
oh.
rosary at least about 3 times, and you good." You know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Mhm.
cool, Father, thank you. Like all this like topical stuff that one could do in order to, seem pleasing to God's eye,
Mm,
is like
mm, mm.
basically the type of stuff that, was told to you to do. And I mean, and if you really think about it, because like you do have like these faiths of or denominations of Christianity that will say that Catholics are not real Christians or whatever. But the thing about it is like all of you all base your Christianity on the Catholic system. All of you do.
Exactly.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
All Every last one of you do.
Every
And
last,
every
including their
last
Bible too,
yeah, including the
including
Bible
their
too.
Bible.
Even though, like, like usually under the Protestant faith, like they usually go by the Bible, which is the 66, that like regular canon of 66 books. I
If
believe
yes,
that, like,
sir.
the Catholic Bible has like some
As
additional,
the
like,
Apocrypha,
yeah, they had the Apocrypha added to it.
and the Anglican thing is used that too sometimes. The
Sometimes they
Apocrypha.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's mostly like, again, in that Book of Common Prayer, they may use like some of the prayers and scriptures as far as like to like formulate, a mass depending on the
Yeah.
occasion that they're doing it on. But like
Mm-hmm.
generally, like the Catholic Bible has about 72 books versus 66.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and then of course, like there's a whole bunch of books that's out there and scriptures is out there floating around in the ether that they just didn't make the cut.
No,
They
no,
they didn't
no,
make it.
Mm-hmm.
They was like, nah, fuck that shit. We ain't gonna put that in the canon. You gone. you know, out of here. And like it's like the pseudepigrapha. Like, that's like, and in some cases, some people feel like the pseudepigrapha in of itself is not a viable source of scriptural material, so it never made it into any canon, right? So
Right.
so you got like a whole bunch of others, all these other things, and like I think that because again of all these particular instances and inferences,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to scripture and how one practices and what you believe versus what you don't, and who's right, and especially in the Black
Right.
American church, like, yo, we got this thing bad where we say, well, if you come to my church, you're gonna learn the true Bible, but if you go down there, you're gonna learn
Then,
the
mm-hmm.
bastardized version of the Bible. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what Bible you using versus them? It's the same Bible.
Yeah.
So how are you going down the street around the corner and learning a bastardized version of the Bible versus your church? Like, what makes you so fucking special? And
Yeah.
you hear these things over and over again to the point where you're like, listen, all of y'all are making me tired. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
want to take a nap right now because you have completely overwrought my brain with some bullshit.
Mm.
And I feel overwhelmed and I'm triggered and I'm having an anxious moment. I may need to go ahead and take a downer right now and just go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. But we know from our experiences, and I think our when you talk and when we describe ours is it's kind of similar because you realize this is the bullshit. Nah, this
Exactly.
God definitely doesn't exist. This is the bullshit. And I've
And
heard it over and over again from atheists who have deconverted, deconstructed.
Mhm.
The
yes.
similar this is the bullshit. This is what you know
Right.
got me out.
Can I also ask this other question,
Yes.
Cynthia, on the subject of women,
Mm.
how Christianity treats?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
In my own version of the religion, the Christianity,
Mhm.
women just had to zip. No, there were no women preachers.
Mm.
At one point,
Oh.
they were considering splitting church to men on this side, men, but they ended up not doing it. But the focus was on holiness, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Women had to if you found someone in church that you liked, you could never approach them.
Right.
The man
You have to go to the
had
pastor.
to be the one going to seek for your hand. Oh no, 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 no. God has to reveal to him the will, and
Yeah,
there were
yeah,
all these
yeah, yeah,
restrictions placed on women,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, how were women treated in your virgin? Did you find that a problem, or was that something that because that's one of the things I struggled with,
Yeah.
when I started deconstructing. So, but why? Why are
Yeah.
women blamed for everything?
Yeah.
Eve is blamed for a fruit when him was standing right next to her while she was eating. Why couldn't he do something? So, but women are blamed for
Mm-hmm.
everything. Just go through
Yeah.
the book. So, yeah, I just wanted to know what that was like
Yeah,
for you.
no,
Yes.
no, that's a great question. And I think that, like, even depending on what type of church you are part of, or denomination, you're still going to have
Mm-hmm.
levels of patriarchy still being displayed in some shape, way, or form.
Super
You,
film.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like, even though the church that I was part of, and even the Anglican church, you can be a woman pastor, you can be a woman priest, like, and like, so women could still possess every office that a man possesses. However, when it comes to like those higher offices, like archbishop and things of that nature, normally those are only just men. Like, that the status
Mm-hmm.
quo as far as like being able to have women like possess like certain offices is not always going to be the case. And there's still that whole thing that Paul said, I want to say, like in Ephesians, when he told women that they should be silent in churches, that
Mm-hmm.
some church, some, like, denominations will take that as a literal thing, and some people will say, well, you need to learn the history behind that. At that particular time, women were not educated, and so they would a lot of times would ask their husbands or whomever questions about what was going on during service, because they did not have any type of clue specifically of what was going on. And then so Paul was saying that women, you should be silent in church, so you go home after the fact and ask your husband a question so that he can answer your questions, or whatever type of shit that is. So same thing with about, like, a woman not necessarily being able to wear what is pertaining to to a man. Some churches will take that as a literal thing. So like they won't let you can't go to church with pants on. You can only wear skirts and dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And my
Mm-hmm.
mom even talked about like how when she was growing up, like she never wore pants to church. Wearing the
Mm-hmm.
pants and things of that nature
Same
was a
here.
later inception. Yeah. And then like and even nowadays, like depending on like the denomination, they will take that literally, so women cannot wear pants in church. However, like you will have some churches who will tell you, okay, well, at that particular time, men and women wore the same clothing. So that what he was really referring to is that if a woman would not cover her head while she was in public, she was actually advertising that she was a sex worker.
Instead of worker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so and you don't want to necessarily be seen like that, since you are a chaste woman of God. So you have to make sure that your head is covered. So, but other than that, yeah, there was a thing about women shouldn't braid their hair, women shouldn't wear jewelry, all this other shit, but to me, it just goes back to this whole thing about how, you know, Abrahamic religions happen to be extremely patriarchal and,
Patriarch.
very oppressive to women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Remember at the time, like especially during the Old Testament, women were not free, autonomous beings. They were
Feminist
the
beings,
property of
no.
either their
Yeah,
fathers or their
yeah,
husbands. You
husbands,
know,
yeah.
and even now, even I think about the times when I was in church, and having like the pastor or a pastor's wife talk to us
Mm-hmm.
about marriage and how it should go. It's always taught that the husband is the head of the household, always.
Mm.
And
Oh, yes.
one of the things, and I remember having like this whole conversation like with my partner, even though like both of us are atheists, but like he comes from like a different generation where women had a different stance than they do now. And one of the things that he said to me is that if I had the means, I wouldn't have you work. I would work. I would prefer you to be able to do other things that you want to do, as far as like doing activism and stuff like that, because I can say that you're very passionate about that, and I am. I'm totally passionate about activism. But the thing about it is that I don't know how not to work. I mean, like, I
Mm-hmm.
grew up, every woman that I saw in my family worked. My mother worked, my aunts worked, my cousins worked. Like, everybody had like some type of profession. And both of my parents, my mother and my father, would tell me, especially like when I went before I would go to college, it's like, go to school, get your education, get a job, support yourself, so you don't have to lean on a man to do anything for you.
Mhm.
Okay, this is what
Correct.
drilled in my head. So like
Yes.
when I would hear like some of these manosphere people talk about hypergamy, I
Oh
didn't know what
yeah.
the fuck that shit was because I was not raised like
Mm-hmm.
that. You know, and
Yeah.
so and I mean like and I understand like a lot of these particular notions are archaic and they are, you know, antiquatal as far as like you know notions concerning about like women's place or things like that. And you know and one of
Mhm.
the things I had to say straight up like to my partner or any man that I dealt with in the past, I'm like, listen, I have no desire to run you, but I will not walk behind you. Either we walk
Mm.
together, we don't walk at all.
That's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Full stop.
That's oh yes. Sin, this has been wonderful. I mean, this discussion, oh my gosh. We have learned and heard so much from you and what you have gone through. Uh, and, you know, I hope that people who are listening, not only now, but in the future, that they will help them to see that it's not only them, they might think they're alone, but it's not only them, they have people with similar experiences
Yeah.
and there's help and there's community.
Mhm.
Yes.
There's community here, you know,
Yes.
to help them through these things. Because sometimes some persons will get this feeling that they are alone in what they're going through,
Mhm.
but usually are not, you know, and hearing stories from other atheists who have deconverted and
Mhm.
deconstructed, you know, that can help them in their journey because they might have just started out. So, Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing with us. And as
Thank
thanks
you.
for co-hosting. You are a wonderful co-host today too.
That's a
You
good
know,
question.
and
Very much.
we are happy and we thank the chat. The chat, as usual, we love the interaction with the chat. The chat answering or making certain interactions, questions, statements related to what we are talking about, and so on and sharing. We thank you all in the chat very much for
And
that.
and and
You
don't
know,
forget to give it a thumbs up. And I
oh yes,
apologize.
and subscribe.
I apologize for the silly mistake. That was my
That,
bad.
that's
My
yeah,
bad. Just
We
but
learn,
yes,
learn
go
as
on,
we
you know.
learn.
So it wasn't your fault. It was the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord was trying to do something there. You know, yeah. But this has been wonderful. So thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Oh,
Cynthia.
one
Thank
more
you,
thing.
S.
Can I just say this like
Yes,
real quick?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so guys, like, listen, if you, I understand, like, you know, this is more like an international broadcast, but like those who happen to be in the
Mm-hmm.
Chicagoland area, I am the
Oh.
new lead organizer for the Black non-believers in Chicago.
Okay.
So
Woo!
we just had a meetup on Saturday and it was
Mm-hmm.
fabulous. And we're going to have more.
Nice.
And also, so please,
Oh,
guys,
yes.
like if you are on Meetup, please join the Black Non-Believers of Chicago. If you're in that area,
Mm-hmm.
we have other Black Non-Believers meetups like in Detroit, in Philadelphia, in Charlotte, you
Yeah.
know, and we have more that's coming up. And of course, like there's the national
Oh,
chapter
nice.
in Atlanta, which is head by Mandiza Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
who is the president and founder of Black Non-Believers. And so, like, you know, the national stuff, as far as like participating in different events that we do, is on that meetup as well. And also, you can check out the blacknonbelievers.org in order for you to find out what's going on as well. And you know, and also too, like if you are in the US, Black Non-Believers is hosting a cruise this November.
Oh.
Oh,
And
yes. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
and matter of fact, one of the speakers is going to be the none other Savage Matt Dillahunty is going to be
Woo.
on. I plan on being there. My partner plans on being there. And we have other speakers that
Lovely.
are actually going to be there as well. It's going to be a great time.
Mm-hmm.
I had a blast on the last cruise. That was the first cruise I ever took in my life. And I
But
actually
but
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw those pictures.
Oh, it was so
Oh,
great. It
yes.
was
That. Oh,
But
awesome. I
it-
loved it. I loved it. And I say that like most people like listen, if you really want like a good being experience, come to the cruise. It's gonna be awesome.
mm-hmm.
Man, let me tell you something. Like my goal throughout the entire cruise was not to be sober, and I achieved that goal. I remember. Quick story before we get out of here. Like, so, like, on our last stop was in Cozumel, Mexico. And I had so much spirit. Like, we had some tequila because we went to a tequila family farm area, and how they were actually, and they taught us how they made the tequila and the different levels of tequila, and what the clear one looks like versus the other ones that have been aged longer. And we got a chance to do a tasting. Then we ended up on the beach, and then, like, they told us that, like, the Mexicano versus the Americano drink sizes were different. And they said the Americano was like huge, Pas Grande, versus like Mexicano, which is like supposed to be like pequeño or small. Man, I said, okay, cool. I've been drinking this whole time, and especially had a whole bunch of tequila. I'm just going to get like a small drink. And then by the time that they gave me my Mexicano small drink, it was like this large. It was like, and it was like, because I ordered a mojito. And so, like, I drank it, and it was so good. And then, so, like, the guy was like, okay, we're going to have to go back. And then, so, like, the guy was trying to help me back into the bus. And I turned to him and I said, we're not on the boat, right? Because the sidewalk is moving.
Oh boy! Wow! Wow! Oh my gosh!
So just not to
that is really good.
If
That's
y'all want to
good.
come to the crew, it would be great.
Yeah.
It would be great to see
Oh
you.
yeah. And one other announcement. In March, I'm going to be on The Cut.
Yay! You want to be on In the Cut?
Yeah, In the Cut. Yeah.
Yay!
So look out for that.
Phil's going places.
But you also got to sign up, like, when I'm actually conducting, to be on nonprofits. Just saying.
Of course, yes, definitely, definitely saying definitely.
Yes.
Oh, right. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.